First, I'm just going to read the post.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. I haven't gone back. It's funny, all the things in my head over the years since 2015, right?
Uh-huh.
Almost 10 years ago.
I know.
But it's remained very fresh in my memory because it was such a poignant, beautiful moment that you and I got to journey together through.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm going to be cringy about what I said.
No. Well, I think the beautiful thing about this story is you started at one place and you ended up at another.
Yes, and I still go up and down.
And I think that's totally the way it is, right,
Yeah.
for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to read this real quickly.
Okay.
It's a page, but
Okay.
it's titled Village People. So this was originally posted on the Facing Homelessness Facebook page on July 8th, 2015. Here it is. We are all village people looking for community, for connection, for a place to belong so that we can live good and do good. Please meet Tyler, Obi, who is Tyler's man-mom, Jen, and her daughter Willow in Boston. They and Melissa, Pua, and Danny all live in RVs parked between the Burke-Gilman Trail and North Lake Way in Seattle. I asked what brought them in their RVs all together, and they said, the police. They said they had all been harassed and that they felt some safety in coming together and forming a village. One of the reasons the Seattle Police and the Seattle Parks Department get involved is that they get complaints from people living in homes, folks not wanting the RVs on their block, not wanting the issues of garbage or other issues that arise from basic living. We, as a larger village, need to reach out to those who are struggling with basic needs to provide kindness and service. Here is a big ask. We're looking for someone with a pickup truck that can meet volunteers this weekend to load up and take away a truck full of garbage for this beautiful group of people. Facing Homelessness will pay for the dump fee if someone can provide a truck. This small act of kindness will make a profound difference in easing tension between these fine folks living in RVs, the fine folks living in homes in the neighborhood, and the fine folks who work as our police. In the Wallingford neighborhood, Rex.
A week ago, my family and I ate at Ivar's. There was a young lady at this RV campsite who very politely made room for my son to pass. Very sweet girl.
Shall I get some
Best
potted
wishes
plants?
to them.
How can it look better? What do they really need?
Rex,
We need
my
another
trailer is
safe
always
parking
available to
corral
help
for
out.
these folks.
I can make
because they will
time
be
either
hassled
Saturday
again.
or Sunday.
Hey Rex,
It's difficult,
Andrew and I would love
but
to
until the
donate
city
our
provides
time
safe
and our
and
truck to
sanitary
help out.
places for
We're
those who
available
can't afford
Friday,
housing,
if that
it
works.
will continue
Saturday
to
as
be
We have a
early as
huge
possible
extended
would be
day
best
simply
for
no
for
place
us.
else for them
We were
to go.
planning
And we
a
know
trip to the
firsthand
coast
how
for the weekend.
difficult
But
garbage
we'll
is to
push it back
dispose
a
of
few
living
hours
in
and
an
have a
RV.
flatbed from Home Depot. Also, if you still have my number, feel free to contact me to coordinate.
Could there be a legal hidden honey bucket nearby?
I'll probably get lambasted for posting this, but it's my opinion and it affects me and I'm entitled to it. I'm one of the fine people who lives in the neighborhood and who has called the cops on this illegal squatting colony of fine folks. The police are not harassing them, please don't get it twisted. These people, 15 plus RVs strong, are illegally squatting in public parking places. Business establishments and people who pay taxes to support those businesses are negatively affected. Ivar's, Westwind, and the marina across the street. It stinks to high heaven. Where are these villagers defecating and urinating? Because I'd imagine they cannot afford to get their toilets pumped out. The amount of garbage left behind by these fine folks is disgusting and disrespectful. I've ridden my bike along the Burke-Gilman Trail towards the sculpture park, and it's the same thing there. And there's a tent along I-5 on the express lanes that has so much garbage, it's probably a crime. It's disgusting. I do not want them squatting in the neighborhood. It's not fair to all of us who pay to live here. Before you go painting me as some elitist ass, I will share that I'm self-employed for 16 years. I've fallen on hard times. I was able to borrow money from my parents, and I know not everyone is so blessed, but if necessary, I would have done anything to get work, to make money. I donate and have served lunches at the YWCA for homeless women. I donate to Mary's Place. I have a friend living with me for free for the better part of the year. They would otherwise be out on the street. Our apartment building's trash bins have been routinely gone through, which is not a problem, but the garbage strewn around and the lids left up for the crows to get into is filthy disgusting, and we've had enough. It's okay for homeless people to strew garbage around where we live, but it's not okay for us to get angry about it. Our cars are near the bin, and one guy's car keeps getting banged into and dented by the homeless shopping carts. The building management had to pay money to construct a fence around it and then lock them up, which someone cut through, and now we finally got locking bins from the city. Is it fair that we have to incur these costs? Why is it DOT's job using taxpayer money to pay staff to clean up after these fine folks, as you say? Why is it the responsibility of people in our neighborhood to do so? The amount of garbage along the Burt Gilman in this area has increased. Is it not our right to not live in a stinky pigsty? They're illegally squatting on public property, and it's within our rights to call the police to make them move. I'd like to live for free in an RV on the streets of Seattle too, instead of paying $1,500 in rent, but it's illegal. And I've made different decisions along the way. I will continue to call the cops to get this to stop.
If you would really prefer to live for free in an RV instead of your lovely apartment, I'm sure that can be arranged.
Most of the people
Do you
living
think
in
this is what
RVs
these
are
people
working
want?
poor.
Sorry,
imply
but I
none of
agree.
them
jobs and
But as
pay
a
I know most of
20-year
them.
retail
One more small
manager in
thing,
downtown
they're not. With
Seattle,
all due
I can
respect,
tell you
most
I
of
have
them
many
I'm proud of
homes
you for
people
getting
live in.
yourself out of your situation, but I don't know if you can say with 100%.
Tracy, thank you for sharing your point of view. And no, you won't get lambasted on this page. This is a page, a community, that is trying to do something different, trying to come to tough issues with love and not judgment. As said in the post, we're not judging the police, the neighbors, or the folks living in the RVs. All this post was about was bringing community out to help with the garbage issue that they are faced with. This benefits everyone. Thank you again for sharing your feelings, hoping this can be the beginning of some good change.
Thank you. I'd like to go with you when you go to help clean up, as I'd like to better understand, because right now I'm just angry. And as someone else posted on this thread, no, God, please do not hide a honey bucket in the area. Are you kidding me? I'm all for trying to come up with ideas, but squatting in RVs all over Seattle is not the answer. Sorry.
I'm Rex Holbein, and welcome to You Know Me Now, a podcast conversation that strives to amplify the unheard voices in our community. In these episodes, I want to remind all of our listeners that the folks who share here do so with a great deal of vulnerability and courage. They share a common hope that by giving all of us this window into their world, they are opening an increased level of awareness, understanding, and perhaps most importantly, a connection within our own community.
That's how it started?
How we met?
Yeah. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I remember why I went to your page, but I don't remember exactly.
Why did you go to the page?
Well, I was living in Wallingford at the time, and there was a lot of RVs along whatever that...
North Lake Way.
Yeah. And I think the clincher was then there was a very big school bus that came and parked like pretty close to where my apartment building was. And I think I would just drive by and, be judgy and scoff and like, why are these people here? And da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't know. I posted something on my Facebook page. I have a pretty big, following. And somebody told me about, I guess it was called Facing His Homelessness.
Tracy and I met 9 years ago when she commented on the Facing Homelessness Facebook page. Her sharing was, you could say, a tour de force of emotional outpouring. Today, I want to revisit that exchange because something important happened, something I believe is available to all of us and provides a path for moving forward when discussing difficult societal issues. Tracy's comments on the Facebook page were for sure ones of disgust and even anger towards those living homeless in her neighborhood. They were not unlike the polarized back and forth emotional statements we often see in the world of social media. However, Tracy did something remarkable after sharing her comment. She remained open and willing to engage. Before we get to that, though, I asked Tracy to tell us a little about herself.
I mean, transplant from a little town, upstate New York, self-employed.
What do you do? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I do a couple of things: marketing research for my career since college, and then I'm a party planner, event planner.
And for yourself, your own
yes,
business.
Yeah, for like over 24 years. So pretty independent, I guess. Pretty opinionated.
Yeah.
I do not have a problem voicing my opinion. Yeah, I would also kind of say I get kind of angry. Like today, I was just noticing that I have a lot of fire in me, which is good and bad, right? And, I love building community and bringing people together. I love being social and throwing parties. I think I am pretty empathetic, but then I also can be judgmental. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a line somewhere within you that you draw, that you say, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And
then sometimes I can be quick to draw, I guess, judgments or opinions, and then I'm not always right. And I can admit, I might argue still or debate, that point.
Yeah.
But, I have like some of my best friends I didn't like at first.
Yeah.
And vice versa,
Yeah. First I want to just compliment you on that ability to have strong feelings, to have judgments, but to remain open, to be swayed, which was how I described you when we first sat down before the recorder got turned on, is that I think that's a beautiful quality of yours, of really being able to revisit it. And I think it's at the heart of what happened, right, on the North Lake Way. I was looking for a word, incident or event or experience.
Yeah.
Was there a Tracy before the North Lake Way that's different from the Tracy today? Or did it have any lasting changes, where I'm going to get to, and how has it informed you, like the Tracy of today? Because we've not only still have homelessness in this city, it's continuing to get worse, right? So if you took yourself back to prior to our exchange, what would you say were your feelings and thoughts about homelessness?
Well, a couple of things. Like I was always supportive of, homeless who, is it weird to say looked a certain way? And by that, I don't mean ethnically or gender or anything. It's, like who doesn't want to help the family with kids living in the car, or the couple who, lost their job. But I would cast judgment, and I will be completely honest, still do. It's like the wolf inside yourself that you struggle with all the time. I feel most empathy for, I think, people who I can tell are mentally ill, and that scares me, and I don't know what to do. Like I would never probably approach them because I would be afraid of maybe they are not of sound mind and they might act out physically, or who knows. But I just don't know how those people even survive, and I don't know what to do about that. So I know that I have more judgments around people who, how do you explain? I mean,
Are you
look
trying
like
to
trouble.
say-
I mean, I don't know. Like the other day, I saw some guy and he's riding his bike and he's pulling another bike along. And so then I have this story like he stole that bike. I mean, I don't know for certain.
Does your judgment, when you say looking at someone that's going through homelessness, does your judgment jump up more when they look able-bodied and should be able to, pull themselves out of it? Is that what you're saying, or is it just a certain?
Yeah. Well, there is sometimes of that too. I guess when I see somebody who visibly looks young and able-bodied, and they'll be standing out with a sign that that does go through my mind about like,
Get a job.
If you spent, yeah. I mean, complete. So
Yeah.
I hate being like, I'm just being really honest, and I know that's what you want.
I will say that this is a very beautiful thing about you, that you can sit there and share honestly. And I think this is one of those situations that if 100 people listen to you say that, I'll bet 98 of them, including myself, with all the experience of having met people, it still jumps up. I think it's hard not to.
But then I also want to go and, I remember when I lived here and QFC, there would quite oftentimes be individuals there, and I would ask them if I would typically would not give them money, but I would buy them food, and I'd ask them if they'd want something. And I feel like it's easier for me to be more humane about it, if that's a weird way of putting it, when it's like I could possibly interact with that one person, like sitting outside QFC or someplace where then I can go in and actually get something for them.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's guilt. There's like, there's empathy, and then there's anger, and then there's guilt for being judgy and angry, and
Yeah, back and forth.
And then there's wanting to do something, and then like, what can I do? And then there's just always going to be another homeless person to take over the homeless person that you bought lunch for.
Yeah.
Can I add something like, I mean, I've done a fair amount of international travel to developing countries, and we'll do like homestays with people, and very poor. So they're not homeless, but they're very poor. And I've said to myself, I'm like, why am I okay with poor people and helping people in like Nepal when I went, or India? But then when I'm here, it pisses me off.
That's such a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to staying in the, family's house in Nepal with a dirt floor and, that kind of thing. But here I do,
It's like a
I'm
trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if I've said, is it because you're afraid of being homeless? Is it afraid,
Do you have an answer to that? Do you know?
Well, no, I don't fully know, because I know I would never be homeless because I have really great parents who financially, if anything happened,
Could help you.
could help me. And I know that many, many, many people do not, even my friends who, are not homeless, they do not have great parents. So, and I, some of the stories I can only imagine, some people on the street.
Yeah.
I don't know. But as a business person too, I also come at it from that point of view. Whereas if I did have, a brick and mortar store, I wouldn't want a bunch of homeless people in tents all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't.
I agree with that.
I can say I know that I am judgy, was judgy, am judgy. I still feel that way sometimes. And then I also, with compassion, like the two or the many more than two emotions and feelings can exist in
can
your
hold
body
them.
and mind at the same time, right? So I think that there's a lot of good people here who want to help homeless people, and then it just becomes overwhelming, and it is scary. So there's not going to be a lot of people who are going to be riding their bike and just stop and talk to people.
I love that you shared that you can hold those two feelings, because I think that's also a little confusing to people, right? And also how we define the world of homelessness outside of those that are homeless. It's either you're for or you're against, right? You're either an activist or you're a heartless, capitalist or whatever, right? And I don't think that's most of the people. I really do think it's conflicted in all of us. Like, what do we do? What do we do about this? I don't want to see people suffering. And at the same time, I feel powerless to make a change. It feels like a tidal wave crashing down on us. And then, and then the city responds with measures that don't feel good, right? Maybe they feel good because we're not looking at the problem, but deep down it doesn't feel good because we know we haven't solved it. I really do think it's just relationship. I think if we were all in relationship, if we all had our Tracy moment, right, of coming closer and actually being brave enough to actually kind of act on that curiosity and that kind of inner feeling of, this doesn't feel right, and wanting to know more. I think if we all did that and got closer, our perspective would shift, right? And out of that would come solutions that are not being talked about at this time.
Tracy's varied thoughts and feelings in response to homelessness is something I believe we, in part, all have in common. We can be touched by the raw humanity in one moment, and in the very next, feel frustrated or even angry about the impact happening to us specifically, or to the livability of our city.
I don't know if you knew how I met that group.
People complain, by people like me complaining.
No, I don't have you to thank for that.
Oh, okay.
I was riding my bike on the Burt Gilman, and they had pulled their RVs in a way that created kind of a little enclave, a little space. And so I was riding my bike past, and I looked down and I saw about 6 or 7 people congregated, and they were having breakfast. And so I came all the way around, rode my bike up, and came around the corner and said, "Hey." And right away everybody turned around and they go, "Hey." And I said, "Can I just sit with you guys for a bit?" And they said, sure. And then somebody grabbed a chair and they pulled it up and I sat down. And Danny was sitting on a stool in front of a grill, and he was he had bacon and he had pancakes, and he said, here, I'll make you breakfast. And his hands were literally black with just grime and just gross. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, no, it's okay. No, he goes, seriously, no, here. And he serves me up. He's picking everything up with his hands. And I'm thinking, I can't say no because it'll be rude. But God, this is going to be the grossest meal I've ever eaten. But I was taken with how warm and friendly they were, and that led to a lot of really good friendships with people in that group. And that's what that post came from.
While visiting Danny and his friends, I asked if I could also take photographs. And with those images and a quick telling of their circumstances, I made a request of the community on the Facebook page. Shortly after, Tracy posted her response comment that you heard at the start of the episode. While space was being given to her view and her feelings, things were heating up.
So basically, you make this initial post, you get a lot of kind of instant on Facebook, on the Facing Homelessness Facebook page, you get a bunch of pushback. You and I have a nice back and forth, and you agree to come an hour, I think, and a half before the cleanup on that Sunday. And I'd like to both of us just share our memories of that.
Okay, yeah. When you suggested coffee, and I said yes, because I guess there is that, quick to anger thing, right, that I admitted to.
Yes.
But then, okay, once you calm down and you step back from okay, I'll meet him. But as I was driving up, I did in my head, because, I like to form stories and judgments, right? Oh, he's probably going to be some dippy long-haired dude. I recall driving up and seeing a little car, a little whatever,
little smart car.
Little smart car, and a lot of bumper stickers on it, right? Maybe there are not a lot of bumper stickers, but in my mind, there's bumper stickers on it.
Yeah, there's probably a Just Say Hello sticker.
Okay, probably. And I said, I bet you that's his car. So I walk in, and there you are. And you're like little hippy-dippy with your long hair to your shoulders. You're so nice. I don't know.
I remember saying to you when I stood up and you walked in, I said, hey, hi. And
yeah.
Do you want to start with a hug?
Oh, God. Okay.
And then you
that's
said,
how it started. Jeez. Well, that's been our back and forth ever since then. I'm like, oh, you're going to hug me now? Really?
But you said...
What did I say? Did I say?
You said no.
Did I?
Yeah. You said something like, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay. That's funny. All right. I was good. I was still I don't know how long from the original post to when we met. Do you know?
It was probably a week.
That was a week. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because I posted for that coming Sunday.
Okay.
And then we met that morning.
And so I don't necessarily recall all of the conversations. For one point where I said, well, they want to be homeless, or they want to live on the street. They want to be homeless. And you said, Tracy, nobody wants to be homeless. And I was like, well, and that kind of came back to when they were first doing the tent cities at Madrona, long time ago. I did go out with my little camera thinking I was going to make a documentary film. And I did talk to different people. And it was not the majority, but I do remember a couple of older gentlemen who are like, we just hop the train. It was kind of like in 1900s, 10.
Yeah.
We hop the trains and we go from town to town. But yeah. I mean, if I was being really honest, those other people did not want to be homeless there. No.
Yeah. And we know that because homelessness equals suffering.
I know.
And nobody chooses suffering.
I know.
What I also remember is it was a really nice conversation, respectful, and both of us were sharing views back and forth. I think you had initially said, I'll come, but then some of the site comments basically got you that I'm not going to be involved in this at all.
Yeah.
And so the idea of meeting for coffee and chatting wasn't to then go to both of us to go help with the cleanup. It was just for you and I to get to know each other and share viewpoints. And so, an hour and a half quickly went by. We had a really good conversation. And I said, kind of I didn't have a watch, but basically checking the time, and I said, I got to get going because the cleanup's going to happen. So, it was really nice to meet you and all this. And you stood up and you said, I'll go with you. And I was like, wow. And I'm such a sappy person, but even me just saying that just now, I could feel my eyelids filling up a little bit with water because it was a powerful moment. I mean, it was a big deal because it surprised me greatly. Like, I was like, wow, that's amazing. You had gotten all this negative feedback. You had come on pretty strong with your initial post, and now you're going to come and help.
Well, I'd say all of that is due to you. So, I mean, you probably won't accept that. But, I mean, if you hadn't taken the time, and been able to kind of be, some people were coming at me pretty hard and hot on that. And the fact that you were still in this kind of kind, peaceful place, it's kind of weird for me to receive that, but at the same time, I was obviously open to it. And, I have always enjoyed doing service work. So I was like, well, if I'm going to open my big mouth and complain, I might as well, if I have this opportunity to go see it and help clean up too, I might as well do it.
Yeah, I don't think I can take credit for it.
Whatever.
Well, here's the deal. You could have come and just had your ass hat on, but you didn't, right? Like you were really there to talk.
Yeah.
And I think the back and forth actually created that moment. Yeah. And then I thought, as we're going there, I thought, well, she's just going to stand there with her arms crossed and every once in a while pick something up and throw it. But no, you were working as hard as anybody, maybe the hardest. You were carrying massive shit to the dump truck we had arranged to be there. And
some other people from the community.
So tell me a little bit more about you're walking to the cleanup. And I know this was 9 years ago, but you're walking to the cleanup. And what are you thinking? I mean, you're just going there to help, or like, what's the transition? Because you went through a big transition.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yes, I went from being completely judgy and really angry, as you can tell. Garbage all over the place. Like, literally, I mean, not that I would even park down there, so it wasn't affecting me in that way, shape, or form. But I guess it just pissed me off. And I did. I recall now driving by, and I would look, and like, there they all sitting on their chairs in the middle of the day, not doing anything, right? So very judgmental, probably looking down on them, making up stories that I don't know, thinking they're just like, oh, ha, 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 here we are living for free, And then I do recall other people from the community who lived in Wallingford there with the truck and everything. So I'm like, okay, so...
there were about 20.
Was there that many people?
Yeah, I've got I should show you.
You should show me the photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a couple of older people and everything. It was very cool. I guess just also seeing, in your interaction, you obviously knew everybody, and the fact that they wanted to help, like that they didn't want to they weren't just expecting us to be there and, clean up.
Do the work for them.
And then I guess then I felt really good. I felt really good about helping. And then I guess some people might say, well, then that's about you, Tracy, and you're feeling that's selfish because you're feeling good about helping people. And so I feel, how do I say things that, I don't want to.
I interpreted that when I heard you say that as like, we're all judgy. Like, that's not, you don't own that.
I know.
Like, every person's judgy, and but I do think also one of the things that's true about judgment is it doesn't feel good. Even when you're judging someone, you kind of know
it gets angry,
it's kind of icky, right? Like,
is,
I got all these feelings about you.
Yeah.
But even when you're blasting them out, there's another side of you that goes, this isn't right. I shouldn't be this way. So
there's a waking up. Like, still, even it's kind of like this Buddhist thing where, like, okay, I see myself getting in this negative spin and the dirt and the squalor and the homeless and the tents and the negatively affecting business, blah, 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 blah. And I still go there. And then I stop and say, like, why is this so...
Why am I doing that?
To me, why is it, And if I'm even able to have a little bit of an interaction, it's like, okay.
Not to stray, but I do think that's one of the problems, is that we all think well, I'm not going to get involved because what can I do, right? Like I think the most important building block, it's like an architect wanting a good foundation, right? The most important building block is relationship, like is stopping and, getting those little interactions, because it's all about humanizing. And when you're close, then the nuances of those moments actually informs how to move forward. Without it, how do you move forward with homelessness, right? Unless you have a little bit of insight into what might be appropriate. As you get closer, you understand more and you can be less judgy, but then you start caring more, and then you're also ripped about, I can't do enough, or I can't, what should I do? And it's a journey. I do remember something else that was beautiful in that moment, and is once we cleaned everything up, filled this whole big dump truck of a truck, then we all pulled into a circle, and everybody talked. And you were like just right in there, and you were blowing my mind. You really were. I was like,
well, I enjoy that. I enjoy interaction with people, and that is, I mean, I'm not going to lie, hopefully a population that I hope I'm never a part of. So having insight into it, is a big thing. Getting insight and actually talking for a long period of time with people who are homeless. I mean, I'd never done that before.
There's another thing that goes on with people in homes in our everyday life. You can pretty much get through every day with scripted conversation, right? Like, I mean, if you go to work and you're in the elevator or at the copy machine, I mean, it's, hey, how you doing, Tracy? How was your weekend? Or, it's all almost on autopilot. And when you converse with people outside living completely different lives, it's off script, and you might be asked things that are difficult to answer, or be confronted with things that are difficult. And now you really have to, I think, be a little more, what's the word, I guess, vulnerable about those situations, right? Because you've got to be present, I think, in those moments.
And I remember the one guy who I think was a veteran, relatively young.
Yeah, Danny.
And I think his RV wasn't working and he needed a part or something. So I think I tried to get him some battery or something. And then I remember a young woman with a baby. She was a blonde gal. She wanted to take her, I don't even know how we had these conversations, but she wanted to get her GED. So then I posted that on my Facebook page, and somebody, I think, mailed maybe to, somehow they mailed GED study books.
To Facing Homelessness that we got to her.
I think so. So, I mean, it is exactly what you say, is that hearing people's stories and what they've experienced. And then you can't help but, well, if you're at all an empathetic person, you can't help but be empathetic, and then also put yourself, like you said, in their place and say, well, but by the grace of whatever you believe in, that could have happened if I didn't have the parents that I did, if I didn't have an education that I do. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
If I had
The
been
skin color.
abused, skin color,
Yeah.
socioeconomic status, that kind of thing, mental health. So then it becomes this thing where then I want to try to fix, right, and help.
Yeah.
Which is good, and maybe, I don't know, maybe not good sometimes.
Yeah, that's also a tough one, because we're a fix-it culture, right? We want to always get in there and fix it. And sometimes just being with a person and hearing and listening and loving is what they need. But and also we don't always know how we should fix it, so we end up fixing it how we think, and it's not necessarily how they need or want, and so it's complicated again, which I think is okay. I think part of it is being messy is okay, hanging in there, being uncomfortable and being okay with that, I think is also what we're not good at.
Well, and you asked earlier, I mean, maybe you're going to ask the question again, but I mean, for sure changed my opinion. It doesn't mean that I don't go back into, times of, in situations of being judgy and being angry and being mad about it. And then, catching myself, because I do remember those stories. I don't know what happened to any of those people. I don't know if you do. And that's why I liked Facing Homelessness, because it was a way, you provided a way for people to be able to connect, because there's a lot of people, myself included, who do want to help, but I'm not going to necessarily approach a homeless camp by myself.
What would you say to people that had the same kind of immediate reaction that you did when you saw the Facebook post, which was to basically say, hey, this is bullshit, these people are throwing garbage everywhere and blah, blah, blah. What would you say based on your experience? Like, what did you learn from that?
Well, I think it is okay to be upset about garbage, and that's from a very me-centered point of view, right? And then, so it's interesting whenever anything makes us mad or upset to feel that, and then also, to be awake, I guess. I remember talking to a therapist at one point, and she's like, when you stop yourself and you're like, oh, okay. So to be like, okay, why am I getting so angry? Why am I
what
so
buttons,
upset?
What buttons are getting pushed here?
Yeah. And, and to think about it. But I think, though, it also helps to have a way to help. And I don't know what you're doing that affords people the opportunities to be able to help and to be able to interact with the homeless community. Because if you just sit around and complain and, bitch all the time, I mean, you're not doing anything to help, right? So you can have those feelings of being upset because there's unhoused people, living on your street, and there's garbage and there's whatever. That's from a me point of view. But then what can you do to try to help too?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you're making about providing avenues to help, not only because it does provide help for those in need, but also my experience is the more that you get to interface,
Yes.
Your fear quotient comes down.
Yeah.
Like you start to separate the reality between fear and danger, because they're two different things,
Yeah.
right? Danger we all have to actually be careful of.
Mm-hmm.
Fear is something a lot of times that we concoct based on our own worries, our own phobias, our own past experiences that may or may not be relative to this situation, but it becomes this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you do things like you did that day, that you came and helped clean up the garbage, it probably brought down, you got to know the people, it brought down that fear.
Yes.
More clearly define what you can and should be afraid of and what you don't need to be.
I mean, and that's why I do think it's so useful for both those who are unhoused and those who aren't, and those who are upset about it, maybe not from a empathetic, humane point of view. They're more looking at it like, it's my neighborhood. It's making me upset, to give us and them an opportunity to hear, because you're all about stories. And once you do start hearing people's stories, you're like, oh gosh, and think about that. And it does stay with you. It doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect and you're not going to ever be judgy again. Although some beautiful humans might be like that and forever changed and quote unquote perfect with regards to this issue. But I would encourage you to do something and give the general public opportunities to interact and hear and not just, like at a fundraiser or see their stories.
Yeah. I love that you are pointing out that you're giving permission to everybody that it's okay to still be pissed off or upset or judgy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
it's kind of human. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, I want to read this to you.
Lord. Was that on your page?
This was on your page.
It was on my page.
July 2015. This was afterwards. This is actually quite beautiful.
Oh, okay.
You wrote, I'm the first to admit that I am sometimes, oftentimes, judgmental about a situation, person, etc., that I don't understand or agree with. I try to accept that I'm judgmental while also being open, parentheses, in some cases, to my mind being changed. I did that today. I met with the founder of Facing Homelessness after posting my opinions on a picture of an RV city of homeless people living down below me along Lake Union that a friend shared on my page. I said I was tired of the garbage all over the place and they're squatting on public land/parking spaces. And there's several businesses along there who need those parking spaces too. I was met with both understanding, compassion for my opinions and experiences, as well as vicious judgment and name-calling, parentheses, arrogant, no clue, white privileged women, etc., parentheses. I wasn't planning to join him and his volunteers after our brief coffee chat to help clean up the RV's camp's garbage, but since I was bitching about the garbage, I thought I'd volunteer to clean up. I stayed for 2 hours. It ended with hearing stories of the family because that's what they consider themselves, living in the 4 RVs we cleaned up around. All who spoke up and shared are in the situations they are because they were abused as children, physically, sexually, emotionally. A few cried as they shared. One, a 40-year-old man, veteran, I admit I didn't want it in front of my yard, homeless camps. Garbage all over the area seems to have increased. It can be scary, parentheses, pulling in my parking lot at midnight in the dark and people rummaging through garbage. I don't know who they are or their intent, but now that I know them and their stories, I'm open. I want to help. Short term, I know I and you, my community, can help them, but I believe there has to be a long-term plan for them too. How do they get off and stay off the streets? That I don't have the answer to. Facing homelessness is first going to address the garbage issue, getting them bins, seeing if we can get a scheduled pickup. One of the women, Jennifer, has a 1.5-year-old daughter. I overheard her saying she wants to go to school. I approached her and asked more. She doesn't have her GED, and so that's the first step. She wants to work in social services. She has to go to school and get daycare for her daughter while she does that. Can she do that while she's homeless? I don't know. If she's open to receiving my help, I'll see what I and you, my awesome community and friends, can do to help her and her family. It's interesting, but shedding judgments is not particularly easy. There's a bit that wants to hang on. Don't know if it's fear or what. Peace. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes me feel kind of guilty too, because I still do have, that dichotomy, right?
Yeah, but you're here talking about it. And I think that's beautiful, and I want to say I love you for that. I mean that.
Don't hug me.
Oh, yeah,
I know.
You've converted to
I've
be a hugger.
I know.
You've softened.
I know. That's it exactly, though. I mean, that is basically, coming from this anger, not in my backyard, judgment, to you being the conduit to allow me to interact and see and hear something different. I didn't recall that they had all been abused in one way, shape, or form. That does not surprise me in a little bit. It doesn't surprise me at all. And I just know majority of us, if we knew that information, would be more empathetic. And it's with anything. There's some people who don't vote because they say my vote doesn't matter. Same thing. I'm not going to help, give this one person, lunch or get them something when I'm at QFC because what is that going to do? It's it's defeating.
I just want to go back to you were starting to say this, the feelings you had before that you unleashed this judgment to this letter. To your community. Because I remember I did cry when you posted this. It was beautiful. You had made maybe it was in the comments, you said something to the effect, I remember, I was wrong, I had judged them, right? And it was this beautiful admission a few days later.
But then people in my community did step up too.
Yeah.
I think somebody did buy something for Danny and somebody did send the books for Jennifer. And and then that made me feel good because then that made me feel like I was working to help to get them out. Because then I was like, well, I want them to not be homeless anymore. Yep.
I think what I would want people to hear out of this discussion with you is that every one of us can go through this transition, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like you are sitting here right now sharing openly about that you still have these feelings of judgment, but that you also were touched by the stories and the people that you met, and that it motivated you to want to do something, and that's going to be a up and down path. But
and I still do. I guess it goes back to that when I see one homeless person that might be, maybe I'm going through the Taco Time drive-in, and I'm like, well, I could get that person something,
Yeah.
It becomes a little more overwhelming when it's a community.
Any other thoughts about homelessness or any advice for people that are wondering about reaching out like you did?
Having this conversation with you is just awakened again, to stay awake. And by that, I mean, we're all going to have, times of anger and judgment and not understanding. And then, try to nip it in the bud as quickly as you can and say, okay, what's on the other side of that? because nobody's perfect all the time, in particular regards to this issue, because it's entangled up. It's so much, from mental health to addiction to, abuse and, income inequality and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, I guess, for us who are lucky enough to be housed and to be able to be surviving, economically, to be a little more, empathetic and to try to stop your anger and judgment quicker, just find, people and organizations that are actually doing something. And I like the more grassroots, like you actually get to speak to the homeless people. I mean, yes, it's good to donate money to XYZ organization at some gala or something, right? But I think it's much more enriching and helps to and educational and insightful to go and work with the people and talk with the people who are experiencing homelessness.
The issue of homelessness is for sure complex and overwhelming, emotional really for everyone. Conversations can become heated in a heartbeat, especially when on social media or other platforms such as Nextdoor. However, if we're to solve this issue, we need more than just the politicians and the service providers to be involved. We need community solutions, meaning we all need to be involved. And if we are all to be part of the solution, it's clear we can't do it being closed-minded and yelling at each other. Thank you, Tracy, for having shared your very real frustration over the issue of homelessness, and at the very same time, having kept an open mind to come closer, to hear another side of the story. You Know Me Now is 100% supported by folks just like you. If you find worth in listening, please consider visiting our Patreon page found on our website to donate. We also have a very active Facebook page titled You Know Me Now, where you can join in on the conversation. I hope to chat with you there. You Know Me Now is produced, written, and edited by Tomas Bernatsky and me, Rex Holbein. We would like to give a heartfelt thank you to Tracy for sharing so openly with us, and to all of you for listening.